Building upon the successful practices of GTD getting things done, David Allen and Edward Lamont are now helping teams work effectively. Their book, Team Getting Things Done with Others, shows how leaders can use a set of principles to improve communication, enable effective execution, and reduce stress for team members. I'm Dave Edwards. As you may know, I periodically discuss productivity with David Allen, who authored the original GTD book. But recently, I invited co-author Ed Lamont to join us to discuss the philosophy behind the book. So people have been working in groups for a really long time. Um, has that environment always
300,000 years, by the way, as we know from the Neanderthals. Yeah.
So it may catch on. So what's been the obstacle for teams working successfully together?
That's a really good question. Ed?
I think mostly it kind of works. It really only becomes obvious to us when it doesn't, right? So one of the things that occurred to me, I don't know when it was, weeks, a couple of months ago, was that humans working together is as natural as us sitting around a fire chatting about the day's events, right? Like that, there's something that's really very, very comfortable about that. Like we need to do it, right? We don't thrive alone as humans. So a lot of the time it does work. I think part of it is just that the environments in which we are now collaborating are much more pressured than they've ever been before. So, if you're moving slowly through the savannah and you're, solving occasional small problems as you do that with your teammates, tribe mates, whatever, that's one thing. If you're doing that under, tremendous pressure for quarterly targets, it's a different thing altogether. And so it's a bit like in David's first book. I mean, if you've read the book, obviously, and you've seen that, we did build on the first book because the first book was built on principles. So it made sense to continue to do that. In David's first book, was this idea that people don't even go looking for something like GTD unless they're moving fast. And that's probably true for teams too, is that the people who need what's in this book most are the ones who are trying to move fast and finding that they're doing stupid things that are getting in the way.
And they don't know they're stupid. So, that's the biggest hindrance, is the fact that people are just in their comfort zone about how they work with other people, especially in the team context. And so there's a big issue there about, wait, how do you change that? Is it optimal? And many of them, I don't know, I'm going to give an intuitive guess here, 90% of teams are suboptimal in terms of what they could be doing if they had the right principles. And I'll be bold enough to say what Ed and I produced is a manual that has never been done before about what are all the best practices of high performance, healthy teams. Not just high performance teams, but teams that are healthy, that are not burning people out. They're reproducible, they're sustainable in terms of their practices, in terms of what they're doing. But that's a new need now because of all of the stuff that's changed in the world in the last, decade or so.
Well, you both are very successful in working with groups and teaching people how to work better together and be more productive. But how did you come to this knowledge? I mean, when you set forth to write this book, I mean, what were the principles that you wanted to emphasize, and how did you know they were going to work for teams?
I'll hand this to Ed. I'll toot his horn a little bit because he's probably in the last decade been much more involved than I have with senior teams who have had some experience with GTD and the basic principles of that, and then watched how osmotically that affected their culture. And, we had not been able to objectify or identify that. And Ed came along and, I said, come on, Ed. Actually, he told me, he said, look, David, I think we need to codify what actually is working here as opposed to just having it be ad hoc and whatever. So Ed, fill in the blanks on that.
Sure. So, I mean, this is not something that we have invented again, right? We've gone into the world and gone what's working and tried to distill that in a way that makes it easy for people to do their own version of it, right? So if you if you're listening to this and you haven't read the book, what you won't find is a recipe which says, you need to do 2 parts of X and 3 parts of Y and then stir and you'll get exactly. It's more like, here are some things that you need to consider and you need to develop your own version of that, because that version will be much more sticky for you and your teammates than if we try and impose an alien structure onto your team, right? You as a team can make decisions that will stick much longer than if David and I throw in, some ideas from consultants who live on the other side of the planet. So that was the process. The process was to go out into the world and to ask questions. What is working on your team? What are the principles behind what's working on your team? And then using those principles and examples to illustrate, we've tried to create a menu of options that people can go through and look at, well, what isn't working worst? What is working worst on our team? Where do we want to start first in terms of trying to make things work a little bit better? Because if you try to do everything, you'll probably break your team. Yeah, that's just not smart. You want to pick, 2 or 3 things that are, the major pain points, try to ameliorate them, gain some speed, and then move on to the next things.
The problem is, Dave, and you can speak from your own experience, you've been on many teams, is that most teams think the way they're doing what they're doing is just the way things are done. And they just don't know that there's a whole nother avenue or opportunity, for them to do things differently. So they're in their comfort zone. That people are okay to come to meetings late. They're okay to have 14 digital products in the middle of the room, as opposed to focusing on what's going on, and having a non-clear purpose about the meeting and having no discussion about what we just decided who's doing it. So these are like duh kind of stuff, but there are a lot of teams that just do that because that's what they've always done, and they just assume that's the way it is. And then they hate going to meetings.
In coming segments, I'll be asking David and Ed for their ideas on how to improve the functionality of teams. David Allen and Edward Lamont are the authors of Team: Getting Things Done with Others. It builds upon the concepts of GTD to get groups to work more effectively. Subscribe to the series so you won't miss any of our upcoming chats. Do you consider yourself productive, but would like to move your productivity system into a digital environment? Hi, I'm Dave Edwards. I can help. I've created a course called Getting Things Done in a Digital Environment. In the course, I take you through each step of GTD and show you how you can use the GTD system in the digital environment that you choose. I demonstrate, I show you my system. It's easy to do once you have someone to guide you through the setup. The course is on demand and online, and it's ready for you right now. Find out more at daveedwardsmedia.com. Click on courses.